Live from Utah's Wasatch Front, the pulse of the Mountain West, where the issues that shape your life meet the truth that sets you free. Across Utah, across the Republic, and around the world, welcome. I'm Trent Christensen, and this is KMMU. KMMU and Main Street Media streamed live wherever you enjoy your streaming. We broadcast live on YouTube, Rumble, X, and on our website, kmmu.org. Now, please join our host, Dan Fillmore. This is Let's Talk Utah's Dan the Eagle.
Welcome back to Dan the Eagle, everybody. Every Wednesday at 4:30. We are so excited to be here. I like that intro, by the way, Dwayne. What Trent did there sounds really, really good. It's clean. Way to go, Trent. As you can see, I am on the road right now. I don't have my boring white background. I have this fun green background. Really excited to be jumping in the show today. If you haven't liked and subscribed to my personal YouTube channel, please do so. Dan the Eagle _76. If you haven't liked and subscribed to KMMU's programs on YouTube, Facebook, X, and Rumble, make sure that you do that as well. Today, we have a really awesome guest. Unfortunately, she's not going to be here for the full hour, but we do have a good chunk of the show with her. Her name is Carolyn Phippen, and she is an amazing person. She's the president of the oldest Republican women's organization in the nation, the Women's Republican Club of Salt Lake. She serves on the board of Utah Citizens for the Constitution and is on the Why I Love America committee that works to increase civic participation and education throughout the state regarding the U.S. Constitution and our nation's founding. She has written extensively on policy issues from various campaigns and lawmakers across the country, as well as for local individuals and organizations. She served as Chief of Communications for Speaker Greg Hughes and Majority Caucus of the House of Representatives for Utah, and later the Intergovernmental Affairs Advisor for the Area Director of U.S. Senator Mike Lee. She's also been involved in various organizations for many years focused on bettering the lives of our children. She attended Brigham Young University and the University of Utah, where she graduated with a degree in political science, just like me. Carolyn and her husband, Scott, are the parents of 5 boys and reside in Draper, Utah. And today we're going to be talking about more about the convention that's coming up here this week, the Women's Republican Club of Salt Lake, and her thoughts on the convention, whether or not she thinks it's fair, and we're going to get into all the things. So without further ado, we are going to bring in the one and only Carolyn Phippen. How's it going?
It's going great. Thank you so much for your kind words. I appreciate it and happy to be here today.
Thank you so much for coming on. So is it Carolyn Phippen?
Yes, you got it.
Okay, Carolyn Phippen. So you have quite the background. Your bio was like 4 or 5 paragraphs. I just summed it up. So tell us a little bit about yourself, Carolyn. What brings you into Utah politics?
Yeah, well, as a Utahn, I think we all ought to be involved. We have been way too comfortable not being involved for too long, too many of us, right? But I was home for 20 years raising my kids. I'm still raising one, and my oldest is 32, so it is many years of raising children. But my focus for a long time was only peripherally political, as I was very focused on a whole lot of things, as you can imagine, with 5 boys. And once I started although let me say this, during that time, I was very involved in a number of organizations that focused on children in foster care, at-risk children, and other things going on in this state, because I think ultimately each individual, each child, each adult in our state, having the opportunity and the ability to be the best they can be is what makes our state what it is, right?
Yeah.
So I tell my political friends all the time, by the way, you are not what makes Utah great. What makes Utah great is the values that founded this state. And frankly, they are the same
totally
values
agree.
that founded the nation, right?
Yeah, I totally agree. You mentioned how in Utah we have a reluctancy to get involved politically. Why do you think that is?
Well, I don't think it's any different in Utah than anywhere else. So I was born and raised in New York. I don't think it's different in New York than it is here. I think that we have grown up in a society that is blessed to not have to spend every waking moment thinking about where our next meal will come from and wondering if we're protected from evil people. Right. This when people talk too, it always makes me laugh. Like we've had the luxury of growing up at the greatest time in all of human history. And we have such flourishing and success around us that it's easy to think that this is the natural state of man. Hardly. Right. This is the exception to the exception to the exception in all of human history. And so it becomes easy. I don't think it's as much politics as it shouldn't have to be politics. It should be values. It should be the way that like us being willing to keep an eye on the way our government runs. Like we have made politics a business, which I don't think it should be. But that's, I think, where you get at this point down the road. And I've worked in politics, right? So of all people, I'm saying this. But I think that when we have an entire industry that is politics, we have a problem. We have a societal problem.
I would agree with that. I think that I agree with you 100%. I feel like I never was interested in politics until I moved out of the country and I saw how people live in a third world country, and it made me just really grateful for what we have. So it made me even more passionate to defend it. But if you're just living in a good time and you have your smartphone and you have your food and you have your friends and you have your AC apartment and your house that's heated, you don't think twice about things. And so it is good to be able to kind of shake people out of that stupor to get them engaged and involved in politics. So I actually misspoke earlier. I said the convention was this week. It was actually last Saturday. So that's the whole purpose that I have you on, Carolyn, because you're the lady. You've got the answers. Tell us a little bit about what happened in convention and then your thoughts on convention.
Yeah. So I was there for about 4 or 5 hours of convention, not the whole thing. I'm not a delegate this year. And I actually had a son who kind of last minute decided to visit from Japan. And then 2 other sons from out of town who said, oh, if he's going to be there, I'm coming too. So I minimized the time that I spent. I was doing a panel with U.S. House members. I was moderating that. And so I had committed to that. I was there. I did want to see what the kind of feel was. I do think this chair race, normally at an organizing convention, we have about 50% of delegates. We had about 70%. That's a 30 to 40%, give or take.
Tell the audience who's running for what positions.
Okay. Yes. Well, the main one, the one that was, I believe, creating all of the angst in the party and among many in the party was the chair position, right? For the chair of the Utah GOP. We had Phil Lyman running, who had run and won overwhelmingly at convention for governor last year, a year ago. I think he was 67% or something like that against Cox. So huge win and a massive loss to a sitting governor, frankly. And then you have this situation, thanks to SB 54, where you can gather signatures, which almost any politician with a lot of cash on hand is going to do that. And that is what Cox.
Oh, we lost Carolyn for a second.
Sorry, I should have put this on airplane
or
something.
No worries. Go ahead.
Anyway, so so Phil really developed a huge following. And can you see me okay?
Yeah, you're fine.
You're
just fine. Yep. Yeah, can you hear me okay?
Can you hear me?
I can. 2 thumbs up from me.
Okay, because I can't see or hear myself, but I will just keep going. So something
I can
happened,
see you and I can hear you, and you look great and you sound great.
And I can't hear you.
Oh, well, that's too bad.
You know what? I'm going to come out and come back in because I do not know what's going on.
Okay. Well, we have been graced with Carolyn's face and her voice, but she cannot hear ours. So we're going to see if we can't fix up what was going on. I'm really excited to hear what she has to say about convention because Phil Lyman really It's going to be an interesting story. Stay tuned. Here she is right here.
Okay.
Can you hear me okay?
I apologize. Yeah, I don't know what happened.
Okay, no worries. Continue.
So there is this huge following that has occurred because for a lot of delegates, they spent a lot of time studying and vetting and talking to candidates. They chose overwhelmingly Phil Lyman. And then, of course, he was beaten in the primary because that's what our system allows, a primary against signature gatherers, even if you lost at convention. And so he had this big following. There were people like me who wrote him in November. He had an overwhelmingly large number of write-in votes in November. And on the, with that momentum, he then moved into running for GOP chair. Rob Axon, who had been the chair previously up until convention and is again, but he was also running. So it was those two. And I like both of those individuals. I respect both. I have worked with both. And I did choose to support Rob for a number of reasons. I think that it was a completely different race than the governor's race. But I also think that when you have, this is a really big deal to me. And that is when you're governor, if I'm electing you as governor, supporting you as governor, when you're the governor, you are the executive in the state. And it doesn't matter if people like you or want to work with you or not, they're going to, because you're the governor. Mm-hmm. Well, right. When you are chair of the party, you do not have the luxury of having people need you to the same degree that they need the governor. And so an effective chair of the party is required in order to be effective to have a lot of really good and deep relationships and great trust. And I don't think for a number of different reasons that was the same.
So you think that Rob was more trusted and had better relationships with the current establishment that exists right now instead of Phil?
Yeah, and not just establishment, but I mean, that's a big part of it. When I look at this last legislative session, Rob was up there day after day after day. And by the way, you don't get paid for this, right? So This is all voluntary, just like the Women's Republican Club that I'm president of. It takes way more time than it should. But I get nothing monetarily out of it. We do it for other reasons, right? And Rob was up there fighting at the legislature, and he was able to make a lot of changes to various bills that would have been hurtful to the party if there had not been his voice at the table. So those relationships have to exist, and there has to be a level of respect there. And I know there was a lot of frustration with a lot of people in the legislature that would not have manifest into the same type of working relationship had Phil been the party chair. And I say this is somebody who has great respect for Phil and worked with him when he was at the House for many years.
So you think just kind of the lack of trust and relationships that Phil had ended up making you support Rob more?
Yeah, it wasn't the lack that Phil had. It was all of the relationships and effectiveness that I saw from Rob.
So Rob is just extremely good at what he does right now. So why take it away from him?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think it's so important. If you do not have a party chair who can open the doors to protect the party legislatively, like, we're screwed.
Yeah. So in your opinion, then you're very happy that Rob won.
I am. I think that was the best path forward for the party. Although had Phil won, again, I have great respect for Phil. And I think we could have, done what we needed to do. But I think this is the ideal situation.
What do you think about, you said that you got involved in politics a while ago. And do you think that Utah is corrupt?
Let's just say this. I have seen a massive change over the past. I've been very, very, I would say, deeply embedded in my work. I have worked very, very closely with elected officials for the past 11 years. And it is not even recognizable to me today.
Really?
Yes, 11 years.
And it's gotten much worse, you'd say.
substantially, like to
Wow.
a degree that I never would have imagined.
Wow, those are some insane claims. Tell us, like, can you give us an example of some things that have happened in the last few years that have made you feel that way?
Well, it is. Here's a perfect example. One thing the SB, and this is a big picture thing. One thing the SB 54 did was it created a political class. So
Just for people in the audience, SB 54 is the bill that we referred to earlier, where people don't have to go through the convention; they can just get signatures to get onto the ballot. Continue.
yes. So you've just completely professionalized things that used to be previously run and done by volunteers, by people who believed in the cause, right? So you have created in the past decade an entire political class that makes all of its money, and it is a lot of money, that makes all of its money off of signature gathering, running campaigns, and then lobbying the people they just put into office.
Right.
That is a very corrupting.
And 10, 11 years ago, that didn't exist.
No, there were one or two people who did campaigns, really. No one who did them full time. No, I shouldn't say that. Not many, and I don't know if there were any. Now the professional campaign class is so embedded in the lobbyist class. They're one and the same. Maybe what happened is a lot of the lobbyists just added campaigning, or a lot of the campaigners added lobbying, and it becomes this ecosystem that just feeds on itself.
Interesting.
So previously, when there wasn't and the amount of money spent on elections has gone through the roof over that past 10 years since the implementation of the signature gathering. So what you have is, it's beneficial for a lobbyist to get involved in the campaign side, again, because then you develop this really strong relationship with somebody who you're trying to get into office, right, who then feels like they kind of owe you after they're in, and you're a lobbyist on the other side.
Basically, what you're saying is 10 years ago, not all, but most people would go through the process of having volunteers who would help them with their campaigns. Everyone that was involved was basically doing it out of the goodness of their heart. Whereas now, people who are doing campaigns have it in the back of their head that later on, I'm going to be able to take something from this guy while he's in office. They're sending the money, and then they're becoming lobbyists to the person that they just elected. Is that kind of the corruption you're seeing?
Basically. You still would hire people previously, but it was different. Like it's grown exponentially. This like political class. And then on top of it, you have I would say I need to look this up, because it feels to me like the number of lobbyists that I see at the Capitol during the session is double or triple what it was 10 years ago. I'm telling you, I guarantee it, that has also morphed at the same time.
Sure.
But again, you create, money is raised from these lobbyists, for campaigns, and campaigns are substantially more expensive now because you hire a bunch more people. Yep. And then the lobby class has grown. I mean, I need to look that up, because I have speculated that it doesn't even feel the same up the Capitol to me.
That would be an interesting stat to see, that between this year and this year, lobbyists have like increased by X amount of percent. I think that would be something that'd be really interesting for people to see. So maybe on the next time we can bring that information. Tell us a little bit more about, I guess, so you have that aspect of it where you have like a professional class, and they're, kind of funneling in the money that comes back to them, that goes back to the campaign, and so they can just stay there forever. What do you think is a legitimate solution to that problem?
Well, I think things need to be more grassroots. It has to be, when you have one person and granted, it still did exist before, just not to the degree. But when you have one person, think about it. If you have a statewide office, you're paying $300,000, $400,000 for those signatures. And a lot of that money's going out the door, right? A lot of that money's going out the door with the people they hire. But what it does is it forces you to bring on a professional really early. Of course, it's substantially less in a smaller race, but you're bringing on that professional really early, and then they're ingrained in your campaign. I have never supported signature gathering to get on the ballot. I think it is it gives us the least educated voters putting people on the ballot. Someone who just scribbles their name on a line, or at least you have the chance of them being the least educated.
I've heard a lot of people say that SB 45 needs to just be completely scrapped. Would you say that that's a good step in the right direction?
Oh, absolutely.
How come that hasn't happened, Carolyn? What's going on?
I know, but and I also.
Oh, Carolyn dropped. She must have gotten another phone call.
So long now that I think that it needs to go. That I think that the problem we have. I think the problem we have is that the Count My Vote people really have, I hear that they are raising the money and they will, well, they're putting their own money in and they will put it on the ballot again. So even if we were to go through all the effort of getting rid of SB 54 in the legislature, which I don't see happening without changing out a few senators, I don't know that we would have the win because, by the way, a number of the people who reject SB 54, who say that, who were supporters, by the way, of like Phil Lyman in for the chair race and for governor. Again, I supported him 100% for governor. A lot of these people also supported the Supreme Court ruling that said when you have a citizens initiative that law, the people through direct democracy can create law that cannot be substantially altered by the legislature. It's their job to create law. Well, what happens now is if you have big money interests, and big money interests are almost the only ones that ever pass, that ever get the signatures to get on the ballot. If you have big money interests, say we get rid of SB 54, big money interests put an initiative on the ballot saying a primary is the only way, and they completely get rid of the caucus convention system, which is what they threatened in the past. A bunch of the people who want SB 54 gone actually supported the Supreme Court ruling that will not allow the legislature to then allow parties to have conventions.
Interesting. So that was a lot. Let me try to summarize this for the audience. So there's a lot of moving pieces there, but in synopsis, even if we tried to get rid of SB 54, there is 100 hurdles for us to go over. And because it kind of already has started, it's going to be virtually impossible to get rid of. Is that what you're saying?
Well, I don't want to say virtually impossible because I say we keep fighting until
but it's just going to be an uphill battle. That's very significant.
Correct. It's an uphill battle. Yes.
Dang. Well, I think that the more that we can talk about how SB 45 creates a political class in Utah, I think that that's a really good selling point because I think Utah prides itself on having a government that's small. And if you can pitch the idea that the government's just getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and those that are getting elected by big money and not by volunteers, and it's the political class, I don't think Utah likes that. When I hear it, I don't like it. So I think that if we can get a groundswell of people involved and interested, then we could easily, turn the tide of the public's opinion. What do you think?
Oh, I totally agree. I think the messaging on this, like on anything, it matters. I was sitting in a hearing, and then I do have to run, but I was sitting in a hearing this last legislative session next to a guy who was total liberal. It was a hearing on, getting us out of Eric. So it was election integrity, and all the liberals showed up, the liberal Democrats. So I'm sitting next to this guy, and I I couldn't really tell where he was politically, but I started asking him some questions, and we soon discovered that we disagreed on about everything. But I asked him questions. Well, why do you feel this way, and why do you support this? And he thanked me for that because he was appreciative that I listened to him and that I cared. But here's the point to what you just said that I think is super significant. Here's a leftist Democrat who showed up to oppose things like ID for voting. Okay. And yet, when I talked to him we talked about the SB 54 piece, and I said, do you realize that since we implemented that the cost of elections has gone through the roof? Oh, and he loves mail-in voting because this is where I was addressing it. I said, it's gone through the roof. Now, big money is buying our elections. The people who are voting, you say you want more, like a higher percentage of people at the polls, but what you're doing with mail-in voting is you are bringing in people who just probably are voting for the guy who had the most big donations to buy him those ads that they heard. Mm-hmm. And when I explained to him what had happened since SB 54, how the cost of elections had exploded, how the number of lobbyists seemed to me to have exploded, how everything was being corrupted by all the money in our politics, as opposed to changing the hearts and minds of the people. It was almost just like the big money driving ad campaigns, getting people to go along with anything. This guy actually told me, you know what? I had no idea that had happened to our system, and you make some good points. And this is a far leftist.
Well, you're an incredibly effective messenger, Carolyn. I know you got to run. I got to ask you one last question before you go. Okay. I know you're in charge of the oldest women's organization for politics. What is your advice for women in Utah that are listening right now?
I would say, so, and I'm going to say this, WRCSLC.org, Women's Republican Club of Salt Lake City.org is our website. Go there, get information on what we do. I feel like we have a lunch most months, not over the summer, but most months, the third Thursday of the month. And I think things like that are a great way to get started without a lot of pressure. Because if you haven't been involved in the past, and most people, unless you have somehow been exposed to your caucus system, most people are just like, I don't know, like, what is that? We don't teach it in our schools. And if your parents didn't teach you, or you haven't just wandered into one for whatever reason, at some point, it's foreign and kind of scary to people. We want to, and
tell us the website one more time.
Yes, WRCSLC.org.
Women's Republican
Club,
Salt Lake City.
Yes.
Okay, here's the website right now for anybody interested. Go to the Women's Republican Club of SLC, Salt Lake City. And then you said every third week you guys have a lunch?
Third Thursday of the month.
Third Thursday of the month.
We're taking a break for summer, but we will have our June one. So June, I want to say it's the 19th, is coming up. And we actually have really good food. We'll be meeting at Texas Roadhouse.
Ooh. And I'm assuming you have to actually be a woman. You can't identify as one. Is that right?
Yeah. Here's the thing.
So if I show up, I can't have any steak?
You actually can have steak, because this is what I tell people. When they ask about men, I'm like, oh, we love men. We just don't let them vote in our club. So you can join with us. You can even become an associate member, but you cannot be a voting member unless you're a real man. So we won the election against a group that, tried to put a man in a dress to keep us out back in December. And yes.
Gross. Got it. Dang it, Carolyn, you have so much to talk about. I wish you could stay longer. We'll have to have you on another time.
Okay. I will for sure come again another time.
Okay. I know you got to get going.
Yes.
So again, so not this month, but in June, the third Thursday, you guys are going to be being at Texas Roadhouse. Again, go to her website. Say the acronym one more time, and then we'll leave it there.
Awesome. WRCSLC.org.
Awesome. Go there. Even if you're a guy, you can go there. Get your wife to go there as well. Okay, Carolyn.
Okay.
Thank you so much. We really appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Bye. And that was the one and only Carolyn Phippen. What a cool lady. What an awesome lady. We need more women like that in our state. So if you want to go and join her club, you totally can. Get some steak. I honestly might just pull up. That'd be fun just to hang out with a bunch of Republican ladies. But it's a crazy thing out there. And our state, if we don't keep an eye on it, will turn into something we don't recognize and something we don't want. So make sure that you like and subscribe to this video. If you want to call in and ask me any questions, you can. We didn't have time to do questions with Carolyn, unfortunately. The number is 385-899-2134. We are taking phone calls for the next couple of minutes. And yeah, make sure you like and subscribe to the YouTube channel on X, Rumble, wherever you're listening to us, and share this show with your friends. Yeah, I think if we're not willing to get involved and really say what we believe on social media or in public, our state will just deteriorate and it will go downhill. And the only people that will have the blame really is ourselves. So I think Carolyn was a really awesome avatar for that. Her website sounds like a great opportunity, a great resource to visit. The Women's Republican Club of Salt Lake City. Again, if you want to jump over there, take a look at her website. And I don't have any other guests, unfortunately. So I've got a couple people listening right now. So if you guys have any comments, if you want to throw something in the chat, ask me a question, that would be great. I had a lot of people, someone writing in lots of chats. They said, "Hi, New York. How do I get more subscribers?" I don't know. I'm still trying to figure that out myself. Getting subscribers is pretty tough. This one says, "We love Jesus." We do. We do love Jesus. We love Jesus. And I think that that's something that really annoys me in Utah, is that we're a very, very, very religious state, very Christian state. And yet we're so afraid to talk about Jesus in our conversations. Like at work, we don't say, "God bless you." We don't talk about how we went to church, how we read something in the scriptures that we really admired. And I think that attitude needs to be more pervasive, because if we're not out talking about what we believe, then other people will talk about what they believe. And in the battle for culture and the battle for souls and the battle for our state and our country, we're just going to lose, not because we don't have convictions, but because we don't talk about them. So I really appreciate your comments here. Starset Dark, appreciate you making some comments there. If there are no other comments or chats or phone calls, I'm just going to leave it there, because like I mentioned before, I am on the road. And so catch us next time on Wednesday at 4:30, and we will see you guys on the next one. See you then.